Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Every economist on edge.
High living costs.
The real estate market is showing
An erosion.
Canada's economic struggles.
Value of the loonie against the greenback. And rising unemployment.
Canada's economy is sliding dramatically.
Navigating this economy has never been more confusing or frustrating, and we are here to help with that. I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings, and this is Today in This Economy, where we keep you informed about what the latest economic news means for you. So it was hot in September. It was still hot in October. It was hot on Halloween night, and it was pretty hot the first couple of weeks in November, too. But it finally got cold where I live a couple of days ago. So naturally, it's time to ask about when to put on the winter tires. So to check in on winter tires before it's too late to worry about them, I called up my favorite automotive journalist, Lorraine Sommerfeld of driving.ca, to just pepper her with winter tire questions. Hey, Lorraine.
How you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing well. As always, this is going to be a lot of fun. Here's my first question for you. I barely even know what winter tires are. Like, what is specifically different about them from regular tires?
Back in the day, my dad had these big gnarly tires. They were winter tires, snow tires, and the whole thing was about the big tread pattern. But actually, what winter tires are really important for is temperature. So you know how if you hit a hockey puck across the rink and it goes flying?
Yeah.
That's because the puck is very, very stiff. It's very hard. That's what your all seasons turn to when the weather gets cold. So when the temperature goes down, those tires get very brittle. Winter tires are made of a softer compound, so they have better contact with the ground, and they whisk away water and ice. They melt it and whisk it away as they come in contact with the ground, which means you have a far safer ride because you maintain your contact with the ground. It's about temperature and compound.
I was so sure it was about the big old treads.
I know, because that's what we were brainwashed into thinking, or that's what it used to be. I can still see them on my dad's old station wagon. He pulled two out and put them on the back every year. And folks put them on all your tires, not just the back. But yeah, it used to be about that. Now that's more for mud and, off-roading and stuff.
Right.
But for people, generally speaking, it's about the temperature and the compound.
All right. So we're talking in, I guess, about mid-November. Just about a week ago, it was like sunny and almost 20 degrees here where I live, which is creepy enough. But when do I have to actually think about putting them on? I kind of turned to my wife, or she turned to me and was like, oh, it's cold. Yeah, that happens every winter. So do we have to do it now?
Your insurance policy, believe it or not, will tell you when they have to be on and off by. You get a discount if you have winter tires. And it hasn't been tested in court if someone took them off early. But basically, anytime after October 1, end of September, you're okay. And what'll happen is if you ran winter tires all summer in our heat, come fall, you would just have all season tires because they'd be destroyed because the heat, again, will eat that softer compound. So you don't want to leave them on all year round. People do that. There's all weather tires you can do that for, but you don't want them on all year. But if you have a hot day, people will call me and go, oh, it got hot this week. It's okay. That's okay. It's not, it's if you leave them on consistently.
So there are, though, all-weather tires that you can leave on all year round.
Yeah, that's a relatively new invention. Nokian Tire, it's a Finnish company. They invented winter tires in Canada 90 years ago, and they introduced all-weather tires 25 years ago.
Why aren't all tires all-weather tires then, Lorraine?
Because you have, some of them will call them all-season. We call them, three-season. The best thing you can do, and every competent tire manufacturer says this, dedicated winters are safer. All weathers, which are getting better and better every year, we used to say no. Now my daughter-in-law has them on. All-weather tires are a good option, and I like Nokian's line. I know I'm pushing them because actually I was talking to them yesterday, which is why they say if winter visits you or you visit winter, you can consider all-weather tires. But for most of us in Canada, we're considered an extreme weather zone. So in your manual, when it says extreme for oil changes and stuff, we're extreme. The safest thing that's not a compromise is to have dedicated winter and then all seasons for the rest of the year. It's an expense, but the difference in stopping alone is huge. It can make or break maybe just an alignment, but it could be a life. And it's definitely going to stop the property damage. And if two cars kiss these days, that's a few $1,000s, even if it's just paint.
I know that you're not necessarily an expert in this field, but how much longer are we going to be an extreme climate country for, at least parts of it?
I'm going to go with always because I'm an optimist. We've always been considered that. And for auto manufacturers and tire manufacturers and anyone that maintains, equipment and gear, we're in that part of the world. We are an extreme climate. And actually, when you mentioned, the huge fluctuation last week, even, I don't see that extreme temperatures they're getting worse, not better. So it's better to, come down on the side of maintaining your vehicle as you're supposed to in an extreme climate and protect it. Usually we're talking about oil. That's the biggest thing. Give your car the lifeblood.
When you set up to do your tire changes, is this something that most people should or can do themselves, or should most people be taking them into a shop or having someone else do it?
It's not a complicated thing to do. It doesn't take a lot of time. I have my mechanics do it because I want them to torque it properly. And what that means is if you don't have the air gun that will torque them, you may not get enough force on it. The other thing is after you've driven about 50 kilometers or so after the swap, you should stop back in and let them just retorque them again. Whenever you see a flying wheel, and it usually happens once a year around here, it's terrifying, but that means a bolt let go. It wasn't tightened enough. So it's a bit of a pain in the butt, but most shops will make you sign a thing saying you have to come back or we're not responsible because they can be held liable. So I prefer, if you're qualified and you've got the tools, have at it. It's not a complicated thing to do. And you know who you are if you can do this.
Right.
Everyone else, it's not a huge expense. And always, always, always err on the side of safety when it comes to your vehicles.
When you say it's not a huge expense, how much should people be expecting to pay? What's a good rate, roughly?
I think I just paid, mine are on dedicated rims. That means I buy those black Steelies that I think look really cool and leave them on those all year round because it can break down the tire wall, moving them back and forth onto and off of your existing rims. So if you can afford once again to dedicate a set of rims for those tires, it also makes it a really quick swap. It should be about $20 a tire for them to just pull them off and put the new ones on. And I know it's a pain in this condo land of storage. Some of them will store them for you. My place donates that money to a charity. If you've got a locker in your condo, if mom's still got a shed, yes, my kids leave theirs in my shed. You can, that it's a pain, but it's worth it.
Do people who drive less or drive only in the city, I'm not asking do they need to skip winter tires altogether, although I guess that could be a question too, but are there different levels of tires? Like, does it matter if we're not talking somebody who's doing like heavy highway driving or driving in places where there's a lot of snow versus somebody who's using them to probably go out on already cleared streets to get groceries and such?
I think that's a really fair question. And I've had people say, if there's a storm coming or it's here, I don't have to go out. I park underground. I only put on 5,000 kilometers a year. It's an expense I don't want to face. I'm reasonable. If you cannot drive, that's the very safest place to be when the weather is inclement. So not driving is the first choice. If you have to be out in it, again, it's not so much about quantities of snow. It's about how low the temperature is getting because that makes it, the stopping becomes very difficult. A lot of people who would be like my late father, I'm an excellent driver. I don't have to do that. And there's people that go, I'm careful, I'm fine. I say, that's really cool. And I believe you. Everyone around you, you want them on winter tires though, because they're going to come crashing into you. So if the expense is too much, when I was a single mom, back when my kids were little, it was the one thing I would put on a Visa card.
Really?
The one thing that I would pay off over time was winter tires. I was broke, but I couldn't afford the alternative. And so that was the one thing I would put on a card. But again, if you live downtown and you don't use your car very often, and that's an option and you don't have to, by all means, look at all weathers next time you put on because they'll give you better than all season. But I'm not going to bully anyone into something. You know what your budget can bear, and I understand. But even you spoke about the different levels. Buy the best tires you can afford. And this is for any tires that you're buying because all that's between you and just bad things is those 4 patches the size of your hands. Every single thing in that car is predicated on those tires working. So it matters. It matters a lot. And we overlook tires. They're boring. We don't know if they're broken down. They have a birth date on them. That matters. They wear out under ultraviolet lights. People abuse them, but tires are really important. So ask your mechanic, say, where are my tires at? Are they still good for another year? People are all over Reddit asking, is this tire okay with a bulge out the side? It's like, don't ask Reddit, people. Ask an expert. Tire shops love to come out and tell you.
Okay, here's my next question. Then I already have a feeling I know the answer. You and I have spoken before about buying cars on Kijiji and such. How do you feel about the postings that sometimes go up? Not even necessarily online. I think I saw one in my neighborhood that's like, hey, $50, I'll come to your house and change all your tires for you.
Okay, put it this way. If they do that and your tire flies off, they can end up in jail. They can be liable for that. Yeah, just like your tech can be held liable.
Even if it's just like a hand-to-hand transaction and they're just doing you a favor kind of thing?
Well, if a tire flies off your car and someone dies and they bust you and you go, I just had my tires changed, you're going to go looking for Joe Poster.
Yes, you are.
And pull it back to him. At least I am. Again, err on the side of safety, because sometimes saving $10 will cost you thousands.
Here's one last question, not about cars. Should you be doing the same thing for your bike?
You know what? I'm not a cyclist, but I do know some hardcore cyclists that absolutely switch out tires for this. Again, it's the rubber compound, so that makes a lot of sense. And another trick I didn't know is if you have CAA, they come to you with it when you're on your bike as well, a bicycle. They will come and help you.
Really?
Yes. Isn't that cool?
I didn't know that. I love talking to you because I figure out all sorts of stuff that I didn't know. So just to sum up for people, yes, you better change your winter tires. You want the winters and not the all seasons because we live in Canada. And your insurance will tell you when you have to change them by, and there are birth dates on your tires.
Yes. And you can do a deep dive on Tire Tech, either on my site or any other site. They'll tell you stuff. Go with the best you can afford. Stick with names that you recognize: Bridgestone, Michelin, Toyo, Yokohama, Pirelli, and of course, Nokian, because I'm, just talking about them. Stick with ones you know, and be careful with off mass-produced ones by some big people. You don't know where they were made. But even if you can afford, there's lots of rebates now and deals. Do the best you can afford, and then keep an eye on them and trust a professional to tell you when it's time to change them.
And change your oil for the winter.
Oh, that should be done twice a year. Most people, the easiest thing to do is change your tires twice a year and do your oil at the same time. Oil is not just about mileage, it's about time. Same with the tires.
Lorraine, as always, thank you so much.
Thanks.
That was Today in This Economy. And if you have an idea for an episode or a personal finance question, we want to hear from you. To get in touch with us, email hello@itepod.ca. Or you can call us at 416-935-5935 and leave us a voicemail. But if you'd like us to play your voicemail on the show, you got to tell us that, because we won't run your audio without your permission. This episode was produced by Robin Simon with sound design by Matt Kesselman. Stephanie Phillips is our showrunner. Mary Jubrin is our audience development lead. Diana Kay is our business manager. And I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings, your host and your executive producer. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.